We are recording.
Excellent.
Am I not? Well, we should be recording.
Yeah,
I mean, I know we're recording, but I want to make sure we're recording the video. It's all new to me. Well, it's not new. I just haven't used it in a while. So here we are, two guys.
two guys talking about how it feels to love music and love our dogs, and the music goes on and the memories of the dogs do, at least.
Yeah, for sure. That's the one good thing. Even when like a singer dies in a band, right? The music lives on.
It's true, and it seems to. Does it feel like to you the older you get, the more frequently someone you know dies?
Not yet. I have not yet. That hasn't happened.
Well, it's getting kind of frightening for me. I'm going to turn 70 this summer,
Oh, geez.
and it's just impossible to believe that I'm actually 70. I feel like, in the best sense of it, that I'm 17.
Oh, wow.
In my head, my body doesn't say that, but my body isn't too bad. That's why when I look back over all this time, and then when I think about having a dog for, well, the last 12 years until he passed in last December, it seems that's such a chunk of my life, but it's a recent chunk, and yet um, I wonder, is this the last dog I'm going to have? And if so, he was the greatest dog I could have had. But now I'm at that point in life where I start wondering how many more times certain things are going to happen. And as much as I love my dog and how badly it still hurts, I don't know whether I can do it again.
I feel the same way. I wonder. I mean, so much so that I think I'm finally ready to get another dog, but I'm not in a place where I think it's a good move, you know. But I too often wonder, is this going to be the last dog? I mean, so much so that I don't want to get a puppy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would rather adopt, a middle-aged dog.
It's funny, the guy at the record store, my most independent record store, really within a 10-minute walk from my house, last time I was in there, I told him that I'd lost my dog, and he rescues dogs all the time. So he's an interesting guy. He advises me on which turntable to get, and now he's advising me that I need to go get a rescue dog as soon as I can, that I'll be doing the dog and myself a favor. And I really hear that. I hear it, and it makes all the sense in the world to me. And my idea has been, maybe if I get 3 dogs, I won't be so attached to the one dog and live and die with him. And when I say things like that, my wife looks at me like I've just grown 4 heads.
Yeah. I'm going to ask how she would take 3 dogs.
She's the one that wanted this dog. So I think I was trying to protect myself and the cat that we had by resisting for a while. And I'm so glad I didn't resist hard enough and that she won. But now maybe I'm not the most reasonable person to talk to about this right now, at least from her benefit.
Right. There's when you connect with a dog, when you have that bond, it's, for me, I don't have kids, so it's unlike anything else I can compare it to. I mean, we were so connected. You know, he could tell when I was in a bad mood, or, so much so that I couldn't raise my voice around him. He'd start to shake.
No.
You know, this is a big 80-pound pit bull, and he'd shake if I raised my voice.
And what was his name?
His name was Rufus.
That's a wonderful name for an 80-pound pit bull. How'd you come up with that name?
You know, the fact is, I lived in New York City at the time. I lived in Brooklyn, and I was coming home from grad school, and my girlfriend at the time, she's like, I don't know what to get you for Christmas. I don't know what to get you for Christmas. And I was coming home from grad school, and I just caught a glimpse of him in the apartment across the hall where I knew they fostered dogs and cats. And I just caught a glimpse of him, and we connected our eyes connected. I know that sounds terribly hopeless romantic, but our eyes connected. And I walked in and I was like, you know what you can get me for Christmas is that dog across the way, across the hall. And she's like, okay. Seriously? There's a dog across the hall? And I said, yeah, there's a dog. So we went over and we saw the dog and met him. And he was just a puppy at that point. But he was coming out of, he had pneumonia. He had double pneumonia. He had parvo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he survived an awful lot to get to that point. So much so that he wasn't even completely cured. He, about 2 days after we saw him, he had to go back to the vet and live in a bubble for a few days because his immune system was so shot. But eventually he came home and we adopted him. And the name Rufus it just came to me.
So you're no longer with this girlfriend, though, are you?
No, I'm not. No.
It's one of those. This is one of those great stories. It's kind of, well, I don't know. It's not really typical, but it makes sense to me that you bond with an animal and with someone that you think you might love, and the dog stays, the one you love goes, or one you thought you loved goes, and you have a lot of reminder of how you got the dog and what you thought you loved, who you thought you loved, and the dog manages to capture your heart.
Yeah. I remember we had one fight. I can't remember what it was about, but she's like, I'm going to take Rufus. And I was like hell you're taking Rufus.
Well, I know it's a major bone of contention when couples break up, who's getting the dog. And
yeah.
I have a couple of friends, and I think they're doing okay enough, but I don't know what would happen if they split up because they have a 12-year-old. Oh, I can't think of the type of dog this is. Maybe it'll come to me, but it's a fairly rare breed, and she's wonderful. But I feel so badly that for them if they ever do, because I think they'll both be, whoever doesn't get the dog will just be brokenhearted. But I hear what, I do have daughters, and what you said a few minutes ago about the bond between you and your dog. I mean, I love my daughters. I have 3 grandkids now. I love them. The tiny one is just almost 7 weeks, so hadn't really developed a personality yet, but just look in her eyes and you love her. So all of that said, I would do anything for my family, but the love I had for my dog is, while it was strong and intense, like my family, it was still unlike, because the dog looks at me, like you said, he reads all my moods. He wants to not fight with me about my moods or run off when I'm having a mood. He wants to reassure me. He wanted to be right there beside me. Yeah. And he knew exactly. I tend to get upset when I'm watching sports. And so that was the main thing. If I started yelling at some player from the team that I love, Alabama, my dog would be right up there wanting to lick me to tell me it's just a game.
Right.
I'm here.
What was your dog's name?
Max.
Max. Short for anything or just Max?
No, apparently it's the most common name for a male dog.
Wow.
When we got him from the Humane Society, my wife had been checking for weeks. I go into the Humane Society, and I wouldn't go because if I do go to Humane Society, I'm coming home with some dog.
Right.
So I said, you go, because she had in her mind what kind of dog she wanted, what she wanted him to look like. She took my daughter, and finally on this day, she calls me up and says, I think I found him. Well, it was my daughter who found him, because my wife was looking in the pen with all the puppies, and my daughter sees Max up in one of the kennels above and pulls him out, and he's just scrambling around. He was about 6 months old, and my wife saw him. They went into the little room they let you go to kind of get to know the dog, and for some reason my wife left without adopting the dog. And so she and my daughter drive they're not even 5 minutes away, and my wife says, I'm stupid. Why am I leaving that dog there? That's the dog I want. So she called me up and said, I think I found him. And I said, well, okay, go ahead. And so we brought him home the next day. And then I had to leave the day after. And I'm resisting loving this dog.
Right.
I'm still defensive about my poor cat who had no clue that a dog was coming to live with him. So when I left, my wife had said the dog was originally called Lucky. She said, well, let's name him Murray. And I thought, Murray's a great name.
Sure.
That was the name of the dog on Mad About You. And so I thought, all right, cool. And so I'm gone to grade AP exams in Louisville, and I'm thinking the dog's name is Murray. And I keep getting pictures. And every time I see a picture, I start showing everybody. So clearly I'm falling in love with the dog. And about 4 days into it, my wife calls me and says, well, now his name is Max. It came to me in the shower. And we all just make fun of her. The most common dog name in the world came to you in the shower?
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So
what kind of dog was he?
Well, have you ever heard of the Carolina wild dog?
No, I have not.
Otherwise known as either the Dixie Dingo or the American Dingo.
Okay.
I had never heard of this either. And so we were told he was mainly a lab, a kind of yellow lab.
Okay.
Whitish, but he's white. He wasn't yellow. He did kind of look labbish, but he didn't grow big enough to really be a lab. And he also he would go and get the ball, but he wouldn't bring it to you. And he didn't like water at all. So all these classic lab things just weren't true of him. So I'm reading one day this great online magazine called The Bitter Southerner. I don't know if you've ever read it, but
no. It's
really for Southerners who don't conform to the stereotype of Southerners, and yet we're still Southerners. Like, for instance, I absolutely hate stock car racing. Can't abide it. Think it's a horrible sport.
Yeah.
So, and I grew up in the midst of some of the most famous stock car racers ever. So it's for people like me, I think. And I'm just reading along in it. And there was a title of a story called The Old Yeller Dog. And I'm thinking, what is this? And the first picture I see I'm going, shit, that looks like my dog. And so I read along, and now I had never heard of this, but they are now a registered breed, the Carolina wild dog. Wow. And I may get this wrong, but apparently they were the only dog now in America who did not really come from Europe. They came over the land bridge when Alaska and Siberia were connected. They somehow managed to get over from that part of the world. And for whatever reason, they filtered down into the South Carolina, Georgia area. And so if you have a dog that looks like a dingo with those dingo ears, but you know it's not really a dingo, then you probably have one of these dogs.
Wow. I do like the name Dixie Dingo.
Yeah.
Kind of rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, it really does. So that's what he was. And he was every trait you could think of: loyal, protective, very smart. And he only really cared for dogs of his own species. He would gravitate towards them. The other dogs he met, he would tolerate.
Rufus was not socialized. We got him, and he was probably about 6 months old. So he wasn't socialized at all. And we don't even know his environment, what he came from. I suspect it wasn't great.
Right.
But what was my point in saying that?
Maybe his traits of not being socialized.
Oh, that's right. So he was not good with other dogs. He was not. We had another dog at the time. My then girlfriend had a Frenchie, and he got along with the Frenchie fine, but he wasn't great. And the sad stereotype that accompanies pit bulls, and people I witnessed it walking the dog. People would cross the street, and I didn't have a problem with it. We lived in an apartment building at the time, and I would muzzle him in the building. I felt that was only fair to my neighbors.
Oh.
But he wasn't aggressive. He wasn't aggressive in that sense. But he He just didn't like other dogs. I don't think he knew how to play.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the big thing. He just didn't know how to be a dog. So
Is that our fault, the way we treat them? Because I think we treated Max like a human in the family, and
sure,
yeah.
I did the same. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I get all those things on like from the dodo and on my Instagram feed where they mention that the dog teaches another dog how to become a dog, how to be a dog, and Ruby, who was the Frenchie, was a spoiled little brat, so she wasn't going to teach him how to be a dog, and because he was not great with other dogs, couldn't interact, so nobody really taught him, and he, much like Max, was good at the fetching of the ball, just not so much the returning of the ball. He would get it, and that was about the end of the game. But he
Well,
had all the classic traits of a pity.
what I wanted to ask you, and what I think would be good to talk about, is that men are notoriously more wanting to either mask their emotions or play them down and pretend that they're not affected deeply by loss and grief. And, as I was taught as a kid, don't cry. You shouldn't cry. Men don't cry. And I remember being on a little league baseball team, and once we lost our first game, all the kids on the team started crying. And I thought, well, I don't think there's anything that we should be crying about. And yet I felt bad because everyone else was crying. And so I kind of pretended to cry too. And when my dad got a hold of me, my dad was a good man, but he said, I don't ever want to see you crying after you lose a game. And so I internalize that to a degree, but I think that I've had a wife, particularly, who's helped me understand that these emotions have to come out, and they have to come out when you feel them, or else you're doing something to yourself.
Right.
And I've also had therapists who've made the, I think, not original. I don't know who thought of this first, but the degree that you grieve tells you the degree to which you loved. And so, what I'm interested in from you, and I'll talk about it a little bit too, is how did you go through the grieving process? What did you do to try to help yourself, after you lost Rufus?
Well, I was naturally gutted when eventually I had to put him down, but I had been grieving him because he had, a cancer in his bladder,
Mm-hmm.
and he was in a diaper, and I had been grieving progressively because I knew I was going to have to do it. I knew eventually there would come a time when I would I just it would be unfair to keep him alive, and when that moment came, I was accepting. I was like, I felt, this is going to sound strange, but I felt privileged in the sense that I was making a decision based solely on his medical condition. It wasn't based on finances. It wasn't based on anything other than he can't urinate by
Mm-hmm.
himself, and if that blocks up his system, it's going to be more dangerous. And he was, there's that, you want your animals to have dignity,
Right.
and like, could I have kept him alive a little bit longer with the diaper? Perhaps, but that whole dignity question. How did I grieve? I don't really know. I cried once in front of a friend of mine about a day after I put him down. I was in the office, but I felt lucky in that I knew I did everything that I could, and it wasn't a shock to the system for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm lucky in that sense.
I think the word you use, privilege, I totally get it, and I totally agree with that. It's a privilege to be taking care of such loving, devoted animals like this.
Yeah.
and to know you're doing your best for them, and to know how much they really, really adore you.
Yeah.
That's the word people have been using with me. You adored your dog, but your dog adored you too.
Yeah, for sure.
So for us, it was a privilege. It was my wife who said, "Oh, Max wasn't even that old," but she said, "I just want you to promise me that we're not going to do anything extravagant or above and beyond the norm of keeping this dog alive when he's clearly not doing well. So if he starts suffering, if we know we need to be responsible and care for him, which means helping him go
Hmm.
so that he doesn't suffer." And I would hear that like I think and feel about any death. I would say, yeah, 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 yeah. That's way off in the future. I'm not worrying about that.
Right.
And yet I did worry about it because as he got older, I kept thinking, I simply don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how he's going to die, of course, but I don't know how I'm going to deal with it. And the scenario with you and Rufus, where you had to make a decision, I truly dreaded having to go through that, but I didn't have to go through it. And in some ways, that was, as my wife, who is a psychotherapist, I should say,
Okay.
she kept saying, this is the best thing for him, and it's the best thing for us because it's the best thing for him.
Right.
And he is actually doing us all, showing us all how much he loves us by not allowing us to suffer, thinking and trying to decide what to do for him. So his was sudden, as I think I told you. He had a stroke. I think he had probably had a small one a few months earlier, but I just found him crumpled on the bathroom floor. He couldn't get up, and that was 11:30 in the morning. And we took him to the emergency room. They said he's neurologically he's not responding, and they said we could keep him overnight, and sometimes they bounce back. But when they brought him back out to us, it was clear that he had already gone down in the couple of hours since we brought him in. And so my wife said, we just can't let him be like this. And even when I think about it now, it's just horrible in the sense of I didn't expect this to happen on that day, but
Right.
still knowing that it was the right thing to do. And we didn't know this vet because it was at the emergency clinic. And so right at the end, I asked her, are we doing the right thing? Is this the right thing to do? And she said, if it wasn't, I wouldn't let you do it.
Oh,
And
wow.
I know, isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
And God, kind. And so we did. And we have his ashes. We have um, our daughters. This happened December 11th, and our daughters managed to get an artist to draw a picture of Max to give to me for Christmas. And
Oh,
so the artist had done pictures of their dogs who are still alive. And so this artist did a wonderful job of capturing not just the way Max looked, but his whole spirit. Even the little tuft of hair that you could see on his chest
yeah.
is there. And he's smiling in that way dogs smile. And
Yep.
so that was soothing as much as it could be soothing. But I've cried. I don't know how many times I've cried with people. I've cried by myself. Just when I think I don't have anything left to cry about, like last week, I got pretty low before you and I spoke about doing this. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. And the reality is, I was just missing my dog.
Yeah.
And I just didn't know how to deal with it. And so I just kept thinking about it, and I wrote a little bit about it. And that's partly how I get through grief anyway, is to write.
Oh, for sure. It was suggested to me recently that maybe I should go to a shelter since it's not the best time to get a dog and walk the dogs. And I was like, I don't think I have the emotional bandwidth to walk a dog and not get attached
Yeah.
and not worry about what happens after I leave. You know, I don't, to me, that seems, and I know it's not, but to me, that seems cruel
Yeah.
to take him out and take him for a run and throw him in the car, maybe go get him a puppy cup or something. But, and then to put him back, it's like furloughing a prisoner.
Yeah.
And I don't think I have it in me to do that.
Well, people tell us that dogs don't understand the more nuanced ways of relating and emotion. And I'm not sure I buy that, because the way dogs will look at you, they're communicating something. And I agree with you. I don't know that I could go do that at a shelter, but I do have a friend in the neighborhood who works all day, and he's agreed that I can come walk his dog whenever I want to. And
Oh,
even though I know she's taken care of, even though I know she's got a good home, I start thinking, her name is Maggie. Is Maggie wondering why I'm not there to walk her, since I've walked her a few times and I might miss a few days? And I'm not totally convinced she doesn't, at least in some small way, wonder where that guy is who comes to get her every now and then, where he's gone to.
I think they do. I would argue that they do, because the way they react to you, they get used to your scent, even if it is just your scent, not the visual. And then they'll get excited when you come. They know it's you.
Mm-hmm. They
you
do.
know?
They do.
So, yeah.
But that's the way I've chosen to try to deal with this bridge of time, where we're going to decide whether to get another pet at all. We want to do some traveling, so we're, that's partly the decision. But I thought I can let people know in the neighborhood that I'm available to walk dogs, and that we're available to host their pet if they want to go away or need to go away. And so there are 2 or 3 dogs I'm already in the process of doing that with. Plus, as I said, my daughters have dogs, and my older daughter and her 2 children are here with us now, and their dog, who is a shepherd husky mix named Warren. He's lying down right over here by me.
What's his name? Warren?
Warren, yeah.
Nice. Very nice.
I don't know why they named him Warren. I have no idea, but and this is anyone who wants to think about, who's listening or will listen and wants to think about what kind of dog to get and how they should do it. So my daughter went to a shelter, and she went a couple of times, and she was looking for a younger dog. Warren was maybe a year or so, and she kept looking around at what they had. And so the woman who worked there said, well, if you really want a dog, if you want to know the kind of dog that we would recommend for you, there's this black dog over here, and he's been with us for a little while. And for some reason, people don't want to adopt black dogs as easily as they do others. So my daughter went over and saw him, and he was this very calm, peaceful dog. And yet you could tell he had also had some background of, as you said, maybe something horrible. And so he was just kind of lying there, and she saw him. And of course, my daughter, being all heart, just her heart was breaking. And she didn't make the decision that day, but she went back, I think it was the next day. And it was maybe an hour and a half drive, because she lives way up in the mountains remotely.
Okay.
And I think they had to go down to Roanoke to the shelter there. But she went back the next day and went right back to him. He remembered her, she said, and she adopted him. So if you see black dogs in the pound, just know that many people think that they're not the dogs that get adopted so easily.
Yeah. Pit bull's the same. But you bring up a good point. I think it's important to do a little research on the type of dog you want ahead of time. I mean, pitties can be a handful because they're hyper sometimes, but they get their zoomies, and then that's usually about it. They're not terribly lazy dogs until later in life. But like, for example, I know I could never get a Jack Russell Terrier.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just too hyper for me.
Yeah. Same.
It's not, I need somebody I can cuddle with. And, to those of you listening or watching, do your research. But yes, and adopt a black dog.
Did you have a dog growing up?
Yeah, we had a shepherd husky mix.
Oh, just like Warren,
Yeah, just like Warren. His
but
name
not
was Barney. His name was Barney,
Barney.
and he lived to be about 13 or 14. And I remember I was a senior in high school and we were just getting ready to put him down, and I was upstairs in my bedroom, and I was like, "Oh, tonight's the last night that Barney's going to be with us,"
Mm.
because we'd set an appointment. Because he had lost a lot of mobility, lost a lot of dignity. My father was carrying him up and down the stairs to go to bed,
Yeah.
you know, and so I went down and I spent the night with him in the living room.
Oh,
You
man.
know, I doubt he knew what was going on, but I mean, it meant something to me.
Well, I think these are the kind of things that show you the kind of person you are. And knowing how much it's going to hurt and knowing how much you're going to miss your dog, that you're there with him at the end and not just shrugging this off as, okay.
Yeah,
I've talked to so many people, and no one has said this to me, fortunately. Maybe they know me too well, but I do know people who've had other people say to them when they've lost a dog, it's just a dog.
yeah,
If someone said that to me, we just couldn't be friends.
for sure. That's not
Yeah. So
acceptable.
no, it's not acceptable at all. And it's just wrong. I mean, they are dogs, but why do you even have one?
Right. I have a friend who's a veterinary doctor, and some of the things that he had seen and throughout his career of the way people treat dogs who just don't want dogs. I think this is, I don't know if he told me this or if I read it in a book, but it almost seems that the wealthier the parent, the dog parent or the pet parent is, the less likely they are to consider it a member of the family.
Yeah.
It's like it's like, I don't understand that. They're the people who probably say, well, it's just a dog, I can replace it. You can't. The dog is its own sentient being.
Yeah, I agree. Even the thought of getting another dog, sometimes it feels like it would offer solace. And yet I think he wouldn't be Max or she wouldn't be Max. I
Right.
mean, she'd have her own personality, but in this moment, what I really want is Max, not just another dog. But if I do get another dog, I do understand that the dog will have its distinctive personality. We'll have our distinct bond, and we'll go on with that. And
Oh, there's Warren.
there's Warren. Warren is such a great dog. Whenever anyone comes near the door, Warren barks. You'll never sneak up on any of us if Warren's here.
Where I live in a city. I live in New Haven, Connecticut, and
Oh, that's a beautiful city.
yeah, well, I never locked my door when I had Rufus, because he would bark anytime somebody came up to the door, and people are like, well, aren't you afraid somebody's going to come in? I was like, he would not have attacked anybody, but just because of his size and barking, it kept people out. And I'm like, I'm not worried about it. If they want to come in here, that's on them. But the intimidation of the bark was enough.
Well, that's right. A lot of people have said, I've heard it many times, that you don't need to pay a lot of money for an alarm system. Just get a dog that will want to defend you, and that'll scare off, well, I don't know how many intruders, but most people aren't going to bother you if they hear a dog barking.
Now, you mentioned, do you still have the cat?
No, the cat, I had this great tuxedo cat named Morgan that
Oh,
my
great.
daughter found in the parking lot of her high school and brought him home. And he was a wonderful cat. He was like a dog. Every time you called him, he'd come. He'd follow me around everywhere, just like a dog. And uh, one one night, he just disappeared. And it's better not to know how he disappeared.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, we live in a place where there are all sorts of predators, and but he just wasn't there. And so, ugh, we had almost lost him one other time when he was about 4. I think he was 11 when he disappeared. But when he was 4, he went missing. And it turned out we had at that point a neighbor who was, let's just say, challenged by life. And the neighbor, we are pretty sure, um, took our cat and kept it inside. And so we saw the neighbor one time and we'd asked him if he had seen our cat. He said no. And then we saw him again. So we're just letting everyone know that if our cat isn't back tomorrow, we're calling the police. The police weren't going to do anything, but it seemed like a good thing to say to this guy. And lo and behold, the next morning I'm making coffee and I hear this meowing at the back door, and there he was.
Wow.
So, and then we had him 7 more years. So
I've got a cat now, and she's 17 years old.
oh man.
Dealing with a geriatric pet is a whole different can of worms. And I said this to somebody the other day. I said, anything over 15, I consider a blessing.
Yeah.
That seems to be like an average age for a cat, and she's still alert. She can still function. She still uses her litter box. There's no real,
Yeah.
she doesn't move as quick unless food's involved.
Yeah. My sister-in-law has another cat that my daughter adopted when she was in college. And I think he's just turned 17. And a couple of months ago, they thought he was having kidney trouble and maybe facing the end. He wasn't eating. And so I said, huh. So I went back into the bedroom where the cat was and I kind of coaxed him out, and I had the treats that he always loved that I gave him. And they said he wasn't eating. I put these treats in my hand. He started eating them up from me. And ever since then, he's kind of bounced back. So I don't know.
Animals are weird, man. They're weird, but they're great.
They're great. I love celebrating them and the people who own them and who really know what they've got when they've got them.
Yeah. And it's, what is that saying? I can't remember it. It's the pets or dogs. I think it was relative to dogs. The meme is of a dog, and it's like something to the effect of, they may not be all of your life, but you are all of their life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That really hit home and resonated because it's true.
Yeah, you can leave and be gone for a few hours. The dog is happy as he can be to see you. And you can leave and be gone 30 seconds. The dog is happy as he can be to see you.
Yep.
I don't know anyone else like that.
No. Usually takes a little bit longer.
Yeah. Not that people aren't happy to see me, but not like the dog. Just right there, the first one. And when I went off to do that grading and I hadn't bonded with the dog, I guess this is the last story I'll talk about him today. So we'd had him for a week and he'd only seen me barely 24 hours. My wife said when I drove up that night, she said he heard the car before any of them did. And he went to the door. And when I opened the door, there he was, wagging his tail, happy as he can be. And I'm going, how do you know that I love you? But he did. So that won me over. That was the moment I was completely won over. Oh my God, this dog loves me.
That's great. It's a great story. Brilliant.
It's really worth talking about these things. That not only is it just fun to talk about your pets, but this too helps with the grieving process.
For sure. If you had to pick a song that you associated with Max, what would it be?
It would be, the song is just called Dog, and it's by the Bottle Rockets, who are, they're just one of these bands that should probably have made it bigger, but never quite did. But this was their one big hit. I saw them here. There's this festival we have twice a year near us called the Albino Skunk Festival. And I have no idea, don't ask me, but we went, the only time we went was to see the Bottle Rockets. And it was outdoors. They had furniture pulled out, but it had rained the night before. So we're sitting on this rain besotted sofa watching the Bottle Rockets outdoors. And they played a bunch of good songs. And finally they said, okay, now we're going to play the song that for us was a hit, that is the only song that anyone might know us by. It was the dog song. And we just loved it. And you can, if you look them up and watch the video, you'll understand everyone's dogs in the video. And it's basically a song that says, if you don't love my dog, I don't care. He's my dog. So that was Max's song from almost the very beginning.
That's great.
What about you?
I mean, off the top of my head, I haven't given it too much thought. I'd probably go Bastards of Young by the Replacements.
That's good. Now that sounds exactly like you.
Yeah. That seems to fit, Rufus. We are the sons of no one, bastards of young.
Yeah. I think I hear an anthem. I think you should write more about that.
I wrote his obituary. Yeah. I wrote it while he was still alive because I knew I wouldn't be able to do it when he passed.
And how long has he been gone now?
I can't believe it's been 2 years already.
God.
2 years. And I've only recently begun to be like, yeah, I think I want another dog.
Well, that's a good amount of time to kind of see where you are and to let the grief of one not completely subside, but go through its cycles.
There were those folks that like were like, you got to get a dog right away. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I can't do that.
Well, I know they mean well, but people don't need to tell you what to do in this regard. They just don't.
Sometimes they can't help themselves.
I said that myself. So,
all right, cool. Let's leave it there.
Okay.
Terry, as always, a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, Keith. Let's do this again.
We will. I'm going to hit end.